Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this Parish Partnership Panel meeting. Your attention is drawn to the agenda item 1, which sets out the rules, the guidance on how the meeting will be conducted, including the ground rules. By way of introduction, I suggest that we do a roll call to confirm which borough councillors, county councillors, parish and town council representatives are in attendance. I'm going to ask Sally, the Democratic Service Officers, to take the roll call. Sally, please.
Thank you, Chair. We will start with borough councillors and then move on to parish and town councils and finish with county councillors. When I call your name, can you please confirm that you are present? Councillor Dalton?
Present.
Councillor Tatton?
Present.
Councillor Bell?
Yes.
Online. Thank you. Councillor Batts?
Present.
Councillor Banks? Councillor Borton? And we have received apologies from Councillor Boxall. Councillor Coffin?
Present.
Councillor Crisp?
Online.
Councillor Harmond? Apology. Okay. We've received apologies from Councillor Harmond and Councillor Hickmore.
Yes, good evening.
Thank you. Councillor Taylor. Thank you. We're now moving on to parish and town councils, and I will call by the name of the parish and town council, and would be grateful if one of their representatives can please confirm that they're present. I will start with the second vice chair from Bath Green, as Councillor Sue Butterfield.
Present.
Thank you. Addington? Not here or online. Aylesford?
Aylesford, Tom Shelley, Parish Council, present.
Thank you. Berlin? Thank you. And Barham? We did receive apologies from two councillors.
Apologies, sir.
Barham, yes, thank you. Deaton?
Present online.
Thank you. Eastmoreland and Luckfield? Thank you. And East Peckham? Thank you. Hadlow?
Present online.
Thank you. Hildenborough?
Present online.
Thank you. Item?
Present online.
Thank you. Kings Hill?
Present.
Thank you. Leyburn? Not here or online. Merriworth? Orphan?
Present online.
Thank you. Platt?
Present online, Sally.
Thank you. Clarkstow? Rush? Chipburn?
Present online.
Thank you. Northland?
Present online.
Thank you. Dunstead? Crossley? Wateringbury?
Present online, Sally, and Ryash Mary has just put her hand up to say that she was there.
Okay, thank you. Westmoreland?
Present.
Thank you. West Peckham? Walden?
Online.
Thank you. Ruton?
Present.
Thank you. And now we're moving on to county councillors. Councillor Dean?
Present online.
Thank you. And Councillor Holder with us
Present
online?
online.
Thank you. Councillor Hudson,
Present online.
Councillor Kennedy, Councillor Rayner.
Present.
Thank you. That's the roll call concluded. Thanks.
And I'm just checking that I was actually roll called correctly and present. Okay, Councillor Betts.
Got a sub. Ah. Item 4, to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 21st of November 2024 are a correct record. A printed copy is available for me to sign, which I've done. Can we take affirmation with members? Great, thank you. Item 5, update on action identified in the last minutes. I've got no notification. Has anybody got any questions on those? No, thank you. Right, item 6 is an update from Kent Police and Crime Commissioner, and we have Matthew Scott, who's going to give us a presentation. Matthew, it's over to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good evening, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me back, albeit online this time rather than in person, but more than happy to take any questions that you might have for me at the end of my update, and I'll also share my contact details with you on the screen subsequently as well. This time of year is probably one of the most important in PCC world. It's budget setting, much like you all do, but also the setting of our new police and crime plan as well. So what I'll do is I'll tell you a little bit about the plan and the priorities I've just agreed for Kent Police for the next few years, what's going on with neighbourhood policing in your local areas, and some of the other projects that we are working on across the whole county to do three things. And the priority I've set for the force is to cut crime, support victims and build trust. Everything we do must fit into one of those categories, otherwise I question why we should be doing it. So I want a real back to basics focus on cutting crime and supporting victims. So for a reminder for those who I've not met before, there are 4 key responsibilities, I believe, for the Police and Crime Commissioner. Number 1, as I've just mentioned, is to set the priorities for the force. We ultimately have the ability to hire and fire the Chief Constable and to hold them to account to make sure that the force is performing. We do that through the setting of the Police and Crime Plan, which sets out what those priorities are. And as I say, I'll talk about those in just a minute. Everything is transparent, so the accountability, the data, the performance is all in the public domain if you want to read it. Our next performance and delivery board is coming up online on the 19th of February, and you're all very welcome to watch it online if you wish to do so. Don't all rush at once, but we're more than happy to share that with you. We also have regular meetings on other bespoke issues as well, but the accountability and performance management is there. Secondly, it's around finance. I'm responsible for setting the budget for Kent Police, the council tax level which is paid, much like yourselves, limited by central government. We get about 55% of our money from central government now. 42% of it comes from your council tax, which is why I always remain committed to the principle there is no such thing as government money, only taxpayers' money. The government doesn't have any money, they have our money. It's our taxes, so making sure that they are well spent as we possibly can. 98.5% of it is spent by the Chief Constable on policing services, you'll be pleased to hear, the majority of which is police officer pay, PCSOs, staff and other roles. So we're making sure that we squeeze every penny that we can to make sure it's being well used and we can balance the budget. The third key role And it's not to me, it's one of the most important parts of the job, but it's not actually within the job title, is victims. We are the local victims commissioners as PCCs, and the support that I provided for victims of crime last year helped over 102,000 people across Kent, whether that was the 80,000 people who accessed support via victim support, or the 22,000 people who accessed one of the other support services that I commission for domestic violence, sexual abuse, stalking, harassment, hate crime. There are a number of different services for you, no matter what type of crime you have been a victim of. And if you search Kent Victim Voice on any search engine, you'll be able to find the document where all of that information sits, your rights as a victim of crime and all the services that you can access. That's publicly available for you. And finally, again, why meetings like this are really important, is productive partnerships. The police can't solve everything on their own. It has to be a partnership. We have a really good working relationship with Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council, with your county councillors as well, and many of you as parishes too. Those partnerships are crucial for sharing information, for sharing intelligence, for cutting crime, gathering evidence, sharing CCTV, all sorts of different things which contribute to bringing down crime and antisocial behaviour. So the more that we can do together, whether that's as through my office, Kent Police, through you as parishes, or Tunbridge and Malling Borough Council, there is so much that we can do together. And as shown by the statistics, your district being one of the safest in the county, and I'm sure Matt's going to tell me it's the safest, but being one of the safest in the county shows that that partnership genuinely is working. There are still some areas that we need to address. We have some hotspot areas that we're working really hard on, but overall one of the safest areas in the whole county, which is really positive. So in terms of the priorities I've set for the force going forward, it has that overarching theme of cutting crime, supporting victims and building trust. But what I'm going to do is going to show you very quickly my plan. Oh, it doesn't give me the ability to share. Never mind, I can't share it with you, but I'll send you the link anyway so that you can all access it. So you can see what my police and crime plan says. But the important things are, it's around protecting people. So making sure our victims are supported, whether they are victims of rape or serious sexual offences, domestic abuse, tackling violence against women and girls, violence and gangs. It's really important that we protect people. Working together to protect places, that's through active neighbourhood policing, bearing down on antisocial behaviour, tackling rural crime and making our roads safer. Protecting property, so dealing with things like acquisitive crimes, burglary, retail crime, vehicle theft, robbery and fraud. And finally, excuse me, those partnerships that I talked about. I chair the Criminal Justice Board, which brings together the police, the Crown Prosecution Service and other agencies to make sure our performance is working well together. I work with, again, with your councils to through the Violence Reduction Unit to tackle knife crime and problems that are being experienced by young people. Making our roads safer, our community safety partnerships, but also my rural crime board as well. So those partnerships are more crucial now than ever in order to protect local communities. But in terms of what that actually means for you, because that's very high level strategic thinking, it's about the things that we're doing in your community. So as you probably know, Mark Stubberfield is now back as your local Chief Inspector. Sarah McCaney is now your local Community Safety Unit Inspector, and I'm sure that they will come to see you and address you at some stage in the future to introduce themselves and deal with any matters that you have that are arising. But I know Mark, he's been my local CSU Inspector in Swanley for many, many years, and whilst I'm sad to have lost him in Swanley, you've got a first-rate officer there who'll be supporting you across Tunbridge and Malling. But as you all know, we've been rolling out our neighbourhood policing model over the last couple of years. We are nearly at full strength. I think we've got 11 out of the 12 in post at the moment. Your neighbourhood task force is in place as well, so officers and PCSOs supporting neighbourhood policing and problem solving, and our schools team is in place as well, so PCs and PCSOs who are working directly with our schools, and that is starting to yield some real positives. But on top of that, we've received funding from the previous government, which I hope will be renewed, to focus some resources on crime and antisocial behaviour hotspots across the whole county. And one of the things I wanted to make sure was that every district got their share of this, that it wasn't just focused on the same areas that usually get the funding. So we have 2 hotspot areas that we are focusing on around Tunbridge High Street, but also in Snodland. So we have some extra patrols going on there. And only 2 or 3 weeks ago, I was out with the officers there doing those patrols to actually go out on foot, to walk around and meet members of the community and deal with those challenges. So our neighbourhood policing model is rolling out. You still have the support of your rural task force as well, your expanded rural task force. There are now PCSOs attached to the team who are focused on crime prevention, and they're going around visiting farms and other businesses in the rural community to do things like property marking, to raise awareness, to do visits after they've been victims of crime, to see if there's anything that they can do to support. So that's been a very welcome addition to the team, in addition to the officers that were still there dealing with those challenges. But some of the other things that we've been doing, sometimes those things which are not often seen in every community but are absolutely vital. And we've been placing a really strong focus on tackling gangs and county lines. We have had some really good successes, which means that Tunbridge and Malling doesn't have anywhere near the same levels of problems as other parts of the district do. And at times we've had none active in the district, which has been really positive. But unfortunately, these people do pop up every now and then. So we're being relentless in our approach, constantly looking at our intelligence. You will probably notice it as the drug deals which are taking place on your local streets. And it's really important that we hear from you when those are happening so that the intelligence and the action can be taken. But we've more than halved the number of county lines in Kent over the last 5 years. We're being relentless in our focus on taking them off of our street and making sure that we make all of our communities safer. And of course, a lot of our resource and a lot of our time of effort, and with the support of your councils, both at KCC and Tunbridge and Malling, is the exceptional effort we're putting in to tackling violence against women and girls. It's a national emergency. It's an epidemic. There's too much going on through domestic violence, sexual violence, stalking, harassment, coercion and control, economic abuse, modern day slavery, human trafficking, and it's happening in every community. In Kent, we record over 30,000 domestic abuse offences alone. We record thousands of stalking incidents and sexual violence incidents. It's estimated that it's up to about a third of all crime in some places, and that is a big challenge for the force, but one we're absolutely committed to. So often when we say we've got more officers than ever before, what are they doing? Yes, some of them are in neighbourhood teams, some of them are in our rural team, but we've had to put an awful lot into dealing with that really key issue of tackling violence against women and girls. So more detectives, more support officers in there to tackle what is becoming a much more complex workload for our officers. We estimate that over the last 15 years, the complexity of the workload that our officers are dealing with has more than doubled. That's not doubled in size as in the volume, so they're not dealing with double the amount of crime, but the complexity of it is much higher than it was even 15 years ago. So we're working really hard on that, but we have very productive partnerships with your community safety partnership. I talk frequently to Matt and also to Des about the projects that you've got going on, and you have been particularly innovative with your work on antisocial behaviour and dealing with off-road bikes and antisocial cars and many other things which have been going on. I've been pleased to see the innovation that has been taking place, and I hope we can all get on board with that. And in terms of the future, the key priorities we've got: making sure our criminal justice system is working for everybody, that we cut crime, that we're supporting victims, and we want to build trust. And I know that there are going to be individual challenges in specific areas. There's going to be things which I've maybe not covered that you might want to hear something about. So please do let me have your feedback. That's what I've come here tonight to hear. If you've got any questions about anything I've said, anything I haven't said, anything specifically you would like some assistance or advice and guidance on, I'm more than happy to help that and facilitate that contact. One of the expectations I have set with the Chief Constable around contact, and I'm sure you will have heard me say it before, is that you should be receiving visits from your beat officers at least once a quarter, and in the interim receiving written updates. If that's not the case, let me know, because I can make sure that I talk to Mark Stubberfield in the morning and make sure that that is being facilitated for you, so that we can maintain those positive and contacted links. So thank you very much for inviting me along. I really look forward to hearing from you.
Matthew, before I open it back up to Des, who's going to do a little speak, can you answer some questions, if any, from the floor currently?
Of course. Well, I'm in your hands, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Until?
I'd just like to reiterate what was said at our recent T&M area committee meeting, that some parishes were not having visits or getting a report. Zara was on the call and has followed that up, and I'd like to make it recorded with you that has happened, and she acted on that within 24 hours.
Results. Good. I'm glad. Let's keep it up. But yeah, that is really important to maintain that link. So please keep me updated. I know you and I, Sarah, we meet a couple of times a year as part of the Calc area meetings with myself. We'll get another one of those in the diary. But yeah, keep me posted.
We've got another question, Matthew. Can you say your name and where you're from, please?
Yes, Matthew, it's Bill Banks. I'm Borough Councillor for Burling, Rush and Leybourne and Leybourne Chase. My question is, do you have any special initiatives to support small shops when it comes to the scourge of shoplifting?
Yes, so retail crime has been a specific area of focus for the force over the last 18 months or so, because it has been rife. People have been much more brazen, and they have been much more aggressive as well, which has been really unfortunate. So we've subscribed to a couple of things. So firstly, it's the National Retail Crime Action Plan, which says that we will investigate all lines of inquiry when it comes to shoplifting, that we will attend where there are being incidents of violence, and I'm following that up to make sure that that is the case. That we build our relationships with the businesses. So I've set up a county-wide retail forum for businesses, but we also have a business crime group as well. We're actively supporting business crime reduction partnerships across the county. There are over 30 of them. So if you know people who wish to join those, we can circulate some details as to how we do that. And we're also looking at some better ways in which the businesses can report, because I know it's quite frustrating for them to have to sit down and do the online form for every single crime. I have been pressuring our digital team, which manage the website centrally for the whole country, and say it is ridiculous that they have to do this, A, for every crime, and B, fill their details out every single crime. That's ridiculous. Why can't we auto-populate some of those things and save some time? I haven't won that battle yet, but it's one that I'm continuing to push. We're focusing on hotspot areas and doing more visible patrols and making sure that we are following up our investigations. So over the last couple of years, the number of crimes that we've solved of retail theft has gone up significantly. The numbers of reported have gone up, but actually the number of ones that we're solving has gone up more than the number of reports. So we are in a better place. We're solving about 30% of them now, but that number needs to go up even further. There are some parts of the county where that number's 50%, which is positive, but we're not still solving enough. And we also need to encourage more businesses to report for two reasons. Number one, to dispel this myth that the police don't care about shoplifting under £200. I wish the Home Secretary would stop saying it, because it's not true. We investigate every single shoplifting, no matter what theft, what the price is. I've seen shoplifting reports for Mars bars. So we do investigate every single one for a line of inquiry. And secondly, is individual businesses have their own company policies. So I don't know if you've got any particular chains. I can't recall what chains you have near you, but for example, there is one fashion retailer who won't report anything to the police unless it's over £500, for example, and that's their internal policy. So we need to share that data better. Somewhere between best estimate 7 and 12% of shoplifting is reported, which means the majority isn't. So we need to get those numbers up. I'd rather the crime statistics went up because I know more about crime than the crime statistics go down because no one can be bothered to report it. So we're trying to do a lot more work to give businesses that confidence to report it, that we can get the evidence, because we may not be able to get them for that individual offence, but it might give us the intelligence we need to get them for something else. So we're doing an awful lot of work around retail crime and shoplifting, but also supporting those retail workers who are being assaulted in the course of their work.
Wendy Palmer, you had your hand up. Have you got a question for Matthew?
Yes, I did, Roger. It was really going back to what Sarah was saying, which is a few minutes ago now. Yeah, Zara came to the COUT meeting. She was very quick to come back with some replies, and she said that we would see the PCSOs. Unfortunately, that hasn't come to fruition yet. So whether it's stuck in the system or whatever, it's you tend to feel that it's very good while you're standing talking to them, but actually the action doesn't occur. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Wendy, can you remind me, which parish are you?
We're Platt, but there are a number around us that were
sure. Yes, just so we can identify which officer needs to come and see you. And how recently was this meeting?
Oh, Sarah, a month ago.
A month ago. So it would, so it would have been just as she'd started. Okay, I'll follow that up. Easily sorted.
Oh yes,
no
she'd
problem.
only been there a few days.
Yeah.
So
yeah. Well, yeah, I really put her on the spot. I think she had a visit from me on day number 3. So that was something. But no, I'll follow that one up. That one we can really easily sort. No problem.
I don't know whether any other parishes have had response at all. So, okay, thank you.
Right, can't see any. Westmoreland?
Yes, Keith Mann, Westmoreland Parish Council. We haven't had a report from our beat officer or a visit from our local beat officer in a long time. I'm talking over a year now. So Matthew, if there's anything you could do to chase that along, because we really would like to be in a dialogue with our beat officer.
Yeah, absolutely. We can have a look at that. Were you given a name for who your beat officer was?
It's known to the clerk. I'm afraid it slipped my mind.
Yeah. I think it was Laura. Laura Farmer.
That rings a bell. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Again, Westmoreland, we can follow that up. No contact for a year.
Thank you.
Right. Any more from the floor? There's not. Des, you're going to add a little bit.
I think Mary wants to ask a question. If that's all right.
Mary's got a question.
I didn't want to ask a question. I wanted to add some cheerful news, because the day after the meeting, our beat officer was in touch with both Riosh and Item, and we've had very productive conversations with him, and he's very much on hand. So it's working well for us.
Good. Now we need to do that for
everybody
everybody.
else is saying it's awful. Yeah. It's not.
No, we need to do that now for everybody.
Yeah.
Good. Progress.
Indeed.
Apologies, Mary, I didn't see your hand up.
That's all
Des,
right. Don't
over
worry.
to you.
There are times when I don't want to see myself either.
Okay, thank you very much, Chair, and a very good evening to all of those on the Parish Partnership panel. I just wanted to take a few minutes of your time, if I can, just to update you from the last meeting where I spoke to you about the innovation that Tunbridge and Morning Borough Council have introduced around an antisocial behaviour enforcement team. Many of you were at the meeting where myself and Anthony Garnett presented to you what we did last year between the months of April and September. And I just wanted to give you an update, because since then I've written to all the parish councils, and I will be doing again at the end of this week with the updates, just so that I can bring a lot of what we've done into context. But for those who weren't at the meeting, sorry, before I go on to that, I just want to thank the Police and Crime Commissioner for mentioning the innovation that we're doing at Tunbridge and Morning, because clearly it's working, and I hope that the stats and the figures that I'm about to give you show that. But just as a summary, the team funded last year worked between April and September, funded by Tunbridge and Morning Borough Council. It worked during the months of April and September, basically because intelligence-led policing dictates where we put our staff to maximise the benefits, and they were the high peak areas of antisocial behaviour. Summer months, children off school, whatever reasons, we wanted to make sure we were there for it. The team comprised of 3 uniformed officers who were granted Community Safety Accreditation Scheme status. That's a big mouthful, isn't it? But basically, they were given special powers by the Chief Constable of Kent, pretty much like those of a PCSO, so they can stop people, they can get names and addresses, they can issue tickets. The list is not exhaustive. And they were there to work alongside our colleagues at Kent Police, really important. They don't replace Kent Police officers, they work alongside Kent Police officers to support them. They worked all the way across our borough to reduce antisocial behaviour. And one of their priorities was to police our public space protection orders. So that's where all of our public tell us where they think antisocial behaviour or issues are taking place. What we've done is not just write a lovely little report like many people across Kent, because remember, we are the only people with this enforcement team. We actually police it, we do something about it. And we tackle it head on in a proactive manner. But we wanted them to provide high visibility, which they did. They provided reassurance, better accessibility, and very much a familiarity, so that people knew that they were there working for them. And again, we demand profiled, so we attempted very much to put the team in the right place at the right times, which worked pretty well. The officers were deployed by a community safety partnership lead. So they were deployed by Tunbridge and Morning Borough Council staff, although we work very much hand in glove with Kent Police. So a lot of the time they were working together. And I know that Kent Police officers were really, really full of praise for the work they did when we debriefed everything at the end of the scheme. And there's some interesting statistics from April to September, which I want to sort of like bring to your attention. And this is in support of the survey work that's just taken place by the Police and Crime Commissioner. Now, last year, you'll remember, last meeting, you'll remember that the Police and Crime Commissioner survey last year had antisocial behaviour, unbelievably, in the top 4 crime categories, which were of most concern for the people of Kent. Now, I can say that I sit on the Kent and Police Crime Panel, and I was there at one just this week. And Mr. Scott said quite rightly that ASB, it's good to see ASB has dropped from where it was in that top 4 position down to where it is normally about 8th or 9th, because people are feeling more reassured that we're tackling ASB jointly. Okay, so I'm talking about Tunbridge and Morning here, and also across the whole of Kent in terms of this. But this is absolutely outstanding, because in Tunbridge and Morning, just Tunbridge and Morning, where I'm going to focus on now, we saw a reduction over those 6 months of 33.4%. So that's the biggest reduction across the whole of Kent around antisocial behaviour, which just goes to show if you've got the right staff, the right resourcing, at the right time, in the right places, then you will deal with antisocial behaviour. And of course, it is outstanding, again, based on the fact that we are already a very low crime and antisocial behaviour area. So we do our bit, we work well, and to get figures like that based on very low figures in any case is outstanding. And I say it is very much the antisocial behaviour enforcement team working with Kent Police colleagues, and we are the only ones doing this in Kent. The PCC survey also showed that the people of Tunbridge and Morning feel safer than they did last year. So which is excellent, because that's what it's all about. It's about reassurance, having less victims, and people feeling confident and feeling safe that they're being looked after in the county, in the borough. And the plan this year, again, is to run a scheme with additional officers. So we had 3 last year. I want to up it to 4 this year, because I would like 2 separate patrols to be going into different parts of the borough, different wards, different parishes, to give that reassurance, to give that high visibility. I did write to all parish councils just before the new year, and I asked them to contribute. I'm not going to beat around the bush here. This is too expensive for Tunbridge and Morning to bear the cost alone. And I did ask for parishes to contribute, and in return, we would give the parishes a service delivery plan, which would be a bespoke plan for your parish, where we would work to eradicate antisocial behaviour, or do everything we could by deployment of officers and working with the clerks, the councillors, around antisocial behaviour. So on that note, I want to thank Westmoreland, Water-in-Bury, Borough Green and Hadlow for your contributions to the scheme this time, and I look forward to working with you in the very near future on your service delivery plan. That's not to say, of course, that the rest of the borough will go unpoliced, because Mr. Scott would do a backflip if I said that. Certainly no way. This is the neighbourhood policing model is excellent, and you will still receive the neighbourhood policing model to its fullest. You will also receive the antisocial behaviour enforcement team periodically into your wards and into your boroughs. And the reason I'm giving you these updates tonight, it just goes to show that if we put resources and effort and time, statistical analysis, intelligence-led policing theories, if we put it all together, it does bear the goods. Again, it's very costly. We can't do it. We can do it this year, but we do need any contributions. I would like to have, my personal goal is to have 6 enforcement officers so we can spread right across the borough. We can only afford 4 this year. And that's why I'm just giving you that update today. I don't know, I'm going to write to the parish clerks again. I've had some feedback that parish clerks didn't pass on my last letter and message. I find that very hard to believe. But all I would urge is, if you want a first-class service from this antisocial behaviour enforcement team, if you want a bespoke service delivery plan just to tackle antisocial behaviour in your parish, then this team will work alongside Kent Police, the neighbourhood policing team programme, to eradicate antisocial behaviour. That's it, Chair, for my update. I'm sorry if it sounds a bit like a sales pitch, but that's exactly what it is. But we are delivering results. If it wasn't a success, I wouldn't have come on here tonight and spoke to you. I would have just sort of wound it down and said, okay, we tried it, it didn't quite work as we expected it to. But it is paying dividends immeasurably, and I just urge you to have a think for your own parishes to get the best from this scheme as it starts. One last thing, we're hopefully this year going to run it from May right up until end of October, because we are aware of the fact that Halloween, once the team had stopped and we couldn't resource them, they'd stopped in the end of September. Halloween became really a bad time for certain areas. I think Snodden, Kings Hill, perhaps 1 or 2 others were 2 of those. And we want the team to be available in those areas, again, working alongside Kent Police to make sure that the communities feel a lot safer in those towns and parishes on that time. Chair, thank you so much. Happy to take any questions if I can answer them, but if not, I will be writing to the clerks in the very near future.
Yeah, Sarah Hudson, question, Des?
Well, it's less of a question, more of a one of my parishes I know has already taken the decision, unfortunately, not to support the ASB request. And as they're in the room, I wondered whether Sarah Barker could perhaps go back to Kings Hill, especially in light of the issues that we had at Halloween and the horrendous situation that was there that night, to go back to the parish council and ask them to reconsider their decision, because if little villages like Water-in-Bury can afford to give them some money, I think the bigger parishes definitely can, and they will definitely benefit from it because the data speaks for itself. Thank you.
Des, to get down to the real nitty-gritty, to get to the standard you want, what type of monies are we looking at trying to achieve? And I believe you've got 4 parish councils that make a contribution.
Yeah, 4 at the moment. A couple still in conversations with us. I think what we want initially this year, what we'd like this year, and look, I know that when we put the letter out at towards the end of the year, most parish councils had already set their budgets. So, okay, we've learned a huge lesson from that. So what I'd like to do, if possible this year, is to seek any contribution. Most are donating or contributing £2,000. If that would be a good one for this year. But I'd say going into year 3 of the scheme, so next year, if parishes could be aware that this is taking place. Now, of course, we've got some areas of our borough that are not parishes, and those fees have to be borne by the borough. So yeah, all I would say is if parishes can take that into consideration, it doesn't have to be a vast amount, but I would like to be able to have as a minimum 4 officers for the borough, and ideally 6. That would be about £107,000. This year it's going to cost us £84,000 because it's not cheap. But yeah, but I'll just be grateful for any contributions, and you can come back to me or to Anthony Garnett, who's our community safety partnership lead on those issues.
Excel.
Thank you, Chair. If I could just answer Sarah, I have already raised this evening. I wasn't happy with the response, and I have already made a note before you raised it, Sarah, that I will contact Des for some discussions regarding this.
Thanks, Sarah. Always a pleasure to speak to you.
Sarah, is that a legacy hand you've got?
Yeah, sorry, hold on.
Taylor?
Thank you very much, Chairman. Part of my question has already been answered by Des, and that is, are we looking to, if the parishes do buy in, we're looking at growing this into the future and perhaps even easing the load on Tunbridge and Moorland? Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, quite simply put, Mike, yeah, absolutely. I mean, cost is always the issue, isn't it? What we don't want to do is step on the toes of Kent Police. They do a fantastic job. I'm quite biased, because many of you know I was an ex-serving police officer. But the fact of the matter is, you know, the Crime and Disorder Act 1998, Section 5 states statutory duty for local authorities and the police service to tackle crime and antisocial behaviour. I think in Tunbridge and Moorland we're doing it more than others. I don't think we can just say to Kent Police, over to you. We're taking the front foot approach. We're being proactive, and we're getting stuck in for our residents, for our communities. I don't mind leading the charge with the team, the excellent community safety team and partners that we have. All I need is a little bit of funding just to keep it going. But you're right, Mike, to ask the question. And yes, I would love to evolve it in the future and move it on so it's bigger and better, and we learn every year.
Any other questions for Des? Westmoreland?
Des, the list of parish councils that have bought into the scheme from your recent letter is very small. So the sum that is going to be raised from that is equally not that big compared to the cost of running the scheme. Do you have confidence that with that sort of level of support from the parish councils, who are all, you know, I mean, this has been I think for most parish councils, it's been a very difficult budget year. We're really trying to keep the council tax increase down if we possibly can. And we found setting a budget that wasn't one that was based on eating into our reserves extremely difficult this year, more difficult than I've ever known. And I'm sure that's true of all the other parish councils. I mean, we did it. We put money into this because we have some local issues, which we're hoping this will be part of the solution to. But I think being asked for money made us question our confidence that the scheme had a future.
Yeah, absolutely right to ask that. I'm confident. All I can say is I'm confident that the scheme will go ahead this year. Because obviously I've been doing my homework and the work with my cabinet colleagues and the leader who's in the room this evening. And so I'm confident this year will go ahead. I'm not as confident for next year because, of course, as you quite rightly say, funding is a difficult thing. And who knows, you're going to get a presentation on devolution, so no one knows where we're going with that, quite so to speak. But the key for me is this year I think we're good, but I can't promise that. I'm 99% sure, but that 1% is because it has to go to a cabinet meeting and where it will be rubber stamped if it goes ahead. And I'm pretty sure that my colleagues will back me on that. The future years is very difficult because if every parish contributed, then we wouldn't have a funding issue. I'm pretty sure of that. And of course, every parish then would have, as I've mentioned earlier, a bespoke service delivery plan. from which we can look at and build into safety measures around antisocial behaviour, and of course the knock-on effects of crime as well, reassurance, public confidence, all those issues. And I think it's a really good scheme moving forward. I know it's good because other borough councils and district councils have contacted me asking for my management plan on it. So I think others would like to do the same in the future, although no one stepped forward yet. Nearest one that does anything like we're doing is Bromley. But yeah, so this year I'm very confident we'll be able to manage it. Year 3, I think there'd be some tough questions to ask if we don't get funding or assistance, contributions, I'd like to say.
Des, we've got Matt Bolton wants to ask you a question.
I won't ask Des a question. I have many opportunities to do that, but just to build on the answer that Des gave, as Matthew correctly pointed out, we are one of the safest boroughs in the county, and that's because of collaboration between Borough Council and Kent Police has historically worked very well and continues to do so. I think the reason that we wanted to put this scheme in place was to do a little bit extra beyond just the solving crime and helping in terms of prevent crime. It was looking to at some of the PSPOs that the Borough Council has, how we can we force against them too. That's why we put the scheme in place. And something that we learned last year was that we didn't want to lose the relationships that have been built up with key stakeholders in each community. So we will go ahead with it this year, subject to a decision by the Cabinet meeting in a few weeks' time. And the great advantage of contributions coming from individual parishes is that what Des spoke about, which is that ability to have a bespoke plan to tackle the issues in your particular parish too. And I think that's really important. And this gives each parish council who contributes some stake in that process. Now, of course, we're looking at a very small number of officers, so they're not going to be able to control every parish 24/7, far from it. And obviously we've got parts of the borough that are unparished, but it really enables us to drill down and use the expertise that comes from the parish council and from the Borough Council and Kent Police through the Community Safety Unit to make sure that the time is being spent on the things that matter most. And that's why we suggested to Parish Council that they might want to put forward a contribution, and we're sort of looking forward to putting those plans in place for those parishes who've contributed. Thank you, Chair.
Right. If there's no other questions, did you want to come back, Des?
No, that's fine. It's just a real pleasure to be able to speak to our parish colleagues again, and thank you for allowing me to do so.
Yeah, well, on behalf of the attendees in the chamber and those online, to Matthew and your good self, thank you very much for your presentation today, and it's most helpful and useful. And just advise all the parishes, it has been recorded, so you can always pick up anything that Matthew has said if you want to go on online and see the recording. So in the meantime, thank you very much for your time.
Pleasure. And both, as I promised, my plan is in the, if you've got the chat bar open, you can see my police and crime plan in there in draft form, and also my email address is there for you all as well. Okay. Thank you, Chair. Thanks, everyone.
Item 7. I think we're going to start with Damien and then quickly go across to Matt Bolton. It's on the English devolution white paper. Should have a copy. I think there are spares. Yes, there. Damien.
Thank you very much. Just give me a moment and I shall put you on the screen. So thank you, Chair. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you for inviting us today. I'm going to cover the first few slides and then the leader of the council, Matt Borton, will cover the rest of it. We're talking about the devolution agenda that is being led by the government, the national government. And the thing to say from the outset is that while it's called the devolution agenda and the devolution white paper, it's actually in two parts. One is about devolution, and the name indicates it's about devolving powers, particularly devolving powers from Whitehall to local areas. But it's also about fundamental local government reorganisation, perhaps the biggest shake-up of local government for 50 years. What is the government's intent when they talk about devolution? Well, there are, I think, three things that are most important. One is their intent to see elected mayors and strategic combined authorities in all parts of the country. Also see unitary councils in all parts of the country. And most importantly, to implement those things as quickly as possible. We'll talk a bit more later on about the timing. When we talk about strategic combined authorities, the name suggests that we're combining, or the government's combining existing authorities together. But that's not the case with strategic combined authorities. They are a new layer of government that sits above what we're familiar with today. Again, we'll talk about that and we'll have a little structure chart to illustrate that a bit. So let's talk quickly about mayoral strategic authorities. So they're meant to cover a population of at least 1.5 million. So they're significant in size, certainly bigger than any borough or district, and actually bigger than most unitary councils that exist, in fact, all unitary councils. The government wants them headed up by an elected mayor. And unlike London, where the mayoral authority has elected members in addition to them, these mayoral authorities only have one elected representative, and that's the mayor. And the other representatives come from the councils. Talk a bit more. They get their powers not necessarily from the councils that sit underneath, not from the county council, not from the boroughs and districts, certainly not from the parishes, certainly not in our geography, Medway unitary. They get those powers from central government, get the resources from central government to pay. So when you hear people say that devolution is
Sorry, we've
Thank
lost
you.
the mic.
Thank you. Hopefully you can hear that now. Funny, because I could hear my voice resonating, but the mic wasn't on. It's important to say as well that these new elected mayors of strategic combined authorities will take over the function of the police commissioner. It will be wrapped up into that role. And if we'll talk about this again in a moment, there is the opportunity not just to have more money, more freedom and more powers, but actually have a financial settlement that allows the new mayor to be able to move money between the traditional sort of siloed pots that existed, take money from one area to another to reflect local needs, local problems. Now, if only there was one type of strategic combined authority, but there are actually three. The important thing to remember is the government's destination is actually to have mayoral strategic authorities headed by a mayor to eventually be what's called established. Get to an established mayoral authority that get all the powers, all the resources, all the freedoms and flexibility. But not all areas will be able to jump straight to that. There are two other categories: foundation strategic combined authority without a mayor, and a mayoral strategic combined authority. To get from the mayoral to the established, you have to be up and running for 18 months, have a track record of delivery. Government. Key message here is that the quicker we have a mayor established, strategic combined authority, the quicker the residents in our will benefit from additional. So where are we nationally? This map shows in dark green those areas that already have a mayoral authority, and in light green where there are devolution agreements. And the white areas are the ones where currently nothing. And you will see that us tucked over there in South East are together with a number of other councils without a strategic combined authority, without a devolution deal, without government's intention is to turn all of those dark green. So the mayoral strategic combined authority, if this is one of the goals of the government, what does it mean for our location? Well, as I mentioned earlier, their target is it has to be 1.5 million population. So looking at our geography, the best fit for that is a Kent and Medway geography. Certainly, initial discussions with officials in Whitehall suggest that that's probably a good geography. It's made easier in part by the fact that a big chunk of that area is coastline on the west, bounded by London. So the geography is quite neat and tidy. But it would combine a county area, the unitary, and all the boroughs and districts. If it did that, it would be a population of 1.9 million, which is within the population size the government. And these are the things that the government has said this new strategic combined authority will be able to do that the government currently does. The greater role around skills and employment, transportation and local infrastructure, particularly transport infrastructure, greater role around housing and strategic planning, economic development, regeneration, the environment, climate change, health and well-being, public service reform and public safety. I think even if these are functions that are coming from central government, these are names of functions that are very familiar to us. They reflect some of the things we do, different levels of local government in the Kent and Medway, certainly with Tunbridge and so it does imply a significant amount of partnership working and cooperation with the new mayor. So what about unitary? I'm going to pass over to the leader of the council to talk us about this.
Thank you, Damien. So this will then look a step beneath what Damien's been speaking about. Damien's been talking the Kent and Medway context, but the government have said you don't just need to put in place a strategic authority, but we require you to do local government reorganisation. So you just have a single tier at the moment. And I'll come on in moments to a graphic which sort of visibly shows this. So unitary councils are something that they have asked all local areas to work towards with the removal of boroughs and districts. Their requirements are as on the screen. So a population of at least 500,000. The Tunbridge and Morlin borough population is 135,000. So significantly bigger than what we are borough. A sensible geography, which ideally reflects existing district boundaries. So they've said the starting point, the building blocks are the words that they've used, but should be existing boroughs. So again, we'll come on to a map that shows that in a minute. And the consequence of a 1.9 million population and a requirement to be at least 500,000 is that you will end up, half decent at maths will have worked this out already, that you'll have 3 or 4 unitary authorities across Kent and Medway, rather than having a county council, 12 district councils, and then Medway unitary authority. So this is the same map that Damien had up a couple of slides ago, but you'll see the one thing that's changed is that minimum population of 500,000. And they're the building blocks. That's really the starting point for how the new unitary authorities will be created. And I suspect that we could all come up with different ways of dividing this into 3 or 4 different options. But the reality is that is where we will almost certainly end up at the end of the process. So this is that map that I referred to, which quite visibly puts the current arrangements, stage 1 and stage 2. So at the moment, you've got national government, you've got Kent County Council, you've got Tunbridge and Morlin Borough Council, and then parish councils. Stage 1, that foundation tier that Damien referred to, would see the introduction of a mayoral strategic combined authority headed up by an elected mayor of Kent. And stage 2 involves the bringing together of the functions of Kent County Council and Tunbridge and Morlin Borough Council that aren't covered by the strategic authority. You will see that there are 2 things that remain consistent across that. The first is a need for a national government, and the second is a need for parish council. So obviously, for the purposes of parish councillors in the room, there is absolutely no change to you and the roles that you do in the community. But obviously, for the borough councillors, there won't be a borough council as we go through the plan. So we'll just come on to the timetables now, because a lot of what we've gone through you may have heard before, because that's been in the public domain for a few weeks. But we found out some news yesterday, as you can see there on the 5th of February, that the government confirmed which councils are in the devolution priority programme and which aren't, and that has affected our timetable going forward. So the first 4 items you can see have happened. So the expression of interest was put in by Kent and Medway and supported by all boroughs and districts in last year. That was just for devolution, I should add. We weren't asked about local government reorganisation. We were just asked about the white paper was published just before Christmas. Kent County Council and Medway Council asked to go in the devolution priority programme and found out yesterday that they were unsuccessful. And last night, a letter lands in our inboxes that has some timetables, a timetable in it for the reorganisation of local government associated. Because one of the reasons, I'll come on to this in a minute, that Kent and Medway was perhaps not successful in the government's eyes was it felt it needed to do reorganisation of local government before devolution. So if I just go back a slide, in essence, it's saying that you can't go from your current arrangements to stage 1 to stage 2. You kind of need to miss out stage 1 and go straight to stage 2. And that means that your mayoral strategic combined authority would come in place as your new councils are set up. So the consequence of that is by the 21st of March, the boroughs and districts and Kent County Council and Medway Council come together to put forward interim plans for what the geography of the new unitary councils would look like. So there's an awful lot of work to do over the next few weeks to come up with these interim plans, and there'll be many different views about it. And we obviously want to engage as widely as possible. Now, we found out this 21st of March deadline last night. So I don't, I'm afraid, have sort of a big engagement plan between now and the 21st of March yet, but we are rapidly working on how that will look. The consequence of not being in the priority programme is the Kent County Council elections are proceeding as planned. They've been cancelled in some parts of the country, obviously not here. They'll take place on the 1st of May. And then by the 28th of November, the full proposals, the full business case for the new unitary councils needs to be submitted to government. So they have told us a little bit about what's in an interim plan, but we know that we've got to provide the full plan by the 28th of November. Now, there's a little bit less certainty about these timetables here, because what we don't know, unlike the areas in the priority programme, is kind of what the end date is. So we know that by the end of this year and into next year, the government will look to identify what the priorities will look like. And then from there, we would possibly expect elections in May 2027 to new shadow councils. Obviously, May 2027 is when Tunbridge and Morlin Borough Council and Parish Councils, if you have elections, take place. So there's a bit of uncertainty at the moment about whether we'll have elections in May 2027, and if so, what will be elected to. And if there's elections in May 2027, then April 2028 will be when the new council starts. The elections always take place about a year before the new council starts. The reason for that is so that the elected councillors for the new authority can, in essence, staff and that sort of stuff, while the existing councils are shut down by councillors who are elected at the time. At the bottom there, we've just noted August 2029 as the end of this parliament. That'll be 5 years after the general election. That's an important date because the government said they would like to do all of this by the end of this parliament. So our working assumption is, well, if we're not 2027, we've got 2028. They could probably do it in 2029, but then they'll have missed their own promise. Now, I can perhaps say this, being a cynic, they actually missed their deadline for confirming which areas were in the priority programme, so it's not got off to a great start by the government, but we've got to take them. That's what they've said, and we've got to work towards that and maintain our professionalism at all times, regardless of whether the government misses its own self-imposed deadlines. So just moving on to the devolution priority programme. So I think there's a bit of concern, I think that might put it mildly, about why Kent wasn't included in there. I think many of us expected Kent to be in there. These areas were included, you can see them on the screen, and the consequence is that the areas at the bottom of this slide are those which were due for election in May, and those elections have been postponed. So when you look at it on a map, and again, this is the same map that Damien had earlier, you'll see that there is a purple line around those councils. And you'll see in the southeast that all of our neighbours, bearing in mind London isn't included within this at the moment, all of our neighbours are part of the priority programme other than us. It does make you wonder sort of why not Kent and Medway? What was wrong about the Kent and Medway bid? Anyway, as I'm sitting there last night enjoying my cocoa, I get a letter from the Minister of State. And there was a lot of sort of fluff, as Sarah Barker has said, in the letter. But kind of boiling it down, this is a quote directly from the letter that was received. Actually, it was sent to the leader of Kent County Council and copied to us. And this is a really important point. And it's that first sentence. So your proposals, that's the Kent and Medway proposals, couldn't be taken forward due to concerns about the size of the population disparity between the proposed constituent members of your Kent and Medway combined authority. So I'm just going to go back a few slides now to this slide here. So in the devolution white paper, it made clear that at stage 1, which is that foundation stage, boroughs and districts wouldn't be able to sit on the mayoral strategic combined authority while they were still while both were in existence at stage 1. But the county council and the unitary authority would be able to. And what the government have implied in that letter is they were concerned that the mayoral strategic combined authority at stage 1 would have one body which represents 1.6 million, that's the population of the county council area, and one body that represents just under 300,000 people, that's the population of Medway Unitary Authority, and that would be unfair because in essence they've got equal voices but for a different population size. Now, that's my interpretation of this, but that is all that we have got from the government on it. I know there's a few Kent County councillors on the call who might be able to confirm whether what their leader said to me yesterday is correct, which is that there are plenty of questions being asked by Kent during the course of the day as to really boiling down why. But that is potentially the explanation as to why we're not in the devolution priority programme. Just going back to unitary authorities, because we speculate about that all night. So again, these are in the same correspondence that we got last night, we got a list of criteria for these unitary authorities to help inform the proposals that we'll need to agree before the 21st of March. And I won't read them out, but they're all up there for you to read. And a lot of this is what you would expect councils to do anyway. So, for example, I'll just take the third one down, contribute to high quality, financially sustainable services to residents. Well, I would argue that we do that at Tunbridge and Moorland anyway. We're one of the very few borough councils left in the country that has no debt whatsoever, so that all of the council tax we collect from you and from all the residents in your parish, we know is directly funding the services that we provide here. We don't have any debts to pay off or any interest on any debts to pay. So I would argue at the moment that we are providing high quality and financially sustainable services to residents. And that's something that as we create the unitary authorities, we need to embed because that's part of the criteria. So going on to these interim plans, these are what we need to, or the questions that we need to answer before the 21st of March. So identify any barriers or challenges, and I'll wait for somebody to say the date of the 21st of March is probably, and the quick turnaround time is probably the first one. But the size and boundaries, indicative costs, that's very difficult to establish. Councillor numbers. My favourite on this is the summary of any local engagements and views expressed. It's going to be very difficult to do meaningful, detailed local engagement in 6 weeks on something that is a once-in-a-generation restructure of local authorities. And if I can just sort of express a personal view on this, when the government talk about this being bottom-up, it is not bottom-up at all. It's the top-down realisation of local government. So again, we've got an awful lot of work to do to work out across Kent, because this is across Kent and Medway, because this will have to be agreed across Kent, how we provide some interim plans. The government of parish councils, because as I said, they remain unchanged. And you'll all be pleased to know that the assumption is that existing towns and parishes continue as you are. I say that because there's nothing that suggests otherwise in the paper, but as we know from our experiences, just because something isn't asked doesn't mean that change is coming down the line. But there's been absolutely no whispers at all of any changes to town and parish councils. It talks about rewiring the relationship. That is a direct quote from the white paper at the bottom of that slide, and strengthening expectations on engagement and voice, which I'm sure will be music to all your ears as it is to mine too. But as I say, there's a couple of questions potentially, but also opportunities. How does devolution continue down to parish councils? Now, were we doing this under the existing structure, and bearing in mind the conversation we've just had about the antisocial behaviour enforcement theme, that's a really good example, I hope you'd agree, of us thinking, right, how can we work with you as parish councils best get the best for your community in terms of co-designing a plan and co-funding it, so that we can tackle the problems that we've all got an interest in tackling. That is in some senses a devolution of power from the borough to the parish. There's the opportunity to redefine the role of parishes, particularly if the principal authority is going to be much bigger than the size of Tunbridge and Moorlin at the moment, and that does mean that likelihood your presence will be even more important, simply because you'll have 3 or 4 councils covering Kent rather than 13 at the moment. So it might be harder to get that engagement that I hope you enjoy with us at Tunbridge and Moorlin. There are potential risks with this. The first one I need to flag, I mentioned the fact that we're debt-free. Fortunately, Kent County Council isn't debt-free. We've got the Deputy Cabinet Member for Finance who could talk about this in much more detail than me. And by the way, the debt was accrued before Harry took on his post, I should say. But again, there's questions. The government have pretty much said we are not going to write off the debt, so that debt has got to stay within local government somewhere. Again, we've asked lots of questions about this, and lots of other authorities have. It is unclear at the moment, but they provided a little bit more on that yesterday. We want to maintain core council services during the period of transition. This is a period of uncertainty. It's an uncertain time for councillors. It's an uncertain time for all council officers at Tunbridge and Moorlin Borough Council. That in turn provides recruitment and retention challenges that we mentioned. The priorities of the council and the projects that the council does will have to shift around that. We look to create the capacity during the transition. Where's that capacity going to come from in Tunbridge and Moorlin Borough Council? The fifth risk, I would argue, is entirely of the government's own making, which is they've set this very, very ambitious timetable. They haven't got off to a very good start. If they want to continue at this scale and at this pace, how on earth are they going to do this across the country? I mean, this is across England other than London that they're looking to do. They've done it in some big cities already, Manchester, Birmingham, Valley. We kind of know where the mayors are. It was on that first slide, but the majority of the country is to come. And I do think there is a risk around parish councils, although we can look at this as an opportunity too. The lack of clarity can mean one of two things. It can mean that the role of parish council is ignored, or the role of parish councils is more important. And we don't know what the answer to that is. at the moment, but there's always the potential for it not to go the way that we want to. So just a couple of outstanding questions to finish. The first one that we've got to kind of nail down over the next few weeks is how many unitary authorities will Kent and Medway put forward. What happens is Kent and Medway put forward a proposal, hopefully one proposal, but it may end up being more than one if we can't get agreement. And the government will then hopefully agree to that proposal. There are questions about the size and population of the wards. You'll know, particularly those of you who are parish councillors before 2023, that the Borough Council went through a boundary review that reduced the number of borough councillors and increased the size of the wards. So as councillors represent more people, that might represent it having more parishes to cover from a Borough Council perspective. Obviously, when all of this will be confirmed is unclear at the moment, and when it goes live is unclear at the moment. So the key questions up there, I don't have the answer to any of them at the moment, and I don't think anyone does. So in conclusion, just to finish off, the government have been very clear with their intent on this, absolutely certain that this is the way that they want to go. Frankly, cancelling elections is very risky business, but they've done it in a number of places, not ours, but in a number of places, and that sets their intent. The phrase devolution orphans is one they've used, so they've said this is nationwide, not going to let any area go behind. We can't just sit here, cross our arms and say, go on then, we're not interested, we'll just carry on as we are. It will be done to us, so we have to positively engage with the process. It is very early stages, that's why there's a list of questions I don't know the answer to. The deadlines are very, very fast approaching, but I just want to emphasise the fifth point, that while all of this is going on, Tunbridge and Moorland Borough Council will still be here, we'll still be delivering our services, still be, hopefully you see this, be a good partner for you as Parish Council in the community, and we'll be steadfast in that commitment until something otherwise. That's for all our residents and also for all of the staff who obviously have got an uncertain future potentially rising from this. But we're very, very keen to ensure that we continue to.
Taylor?
Very much, Chairman. I've been asked so many times I've forgotten. Why? I've forgotten my own question now. That's the trouble with old age, it will come to all of you. Yeah, the question gets asked of me, why has Tunbridge and Moorland elected to keep going with things like the local plan? Carry on as normal, business as usual. Well, this grand scheme of the government is less than 2 months old, and they're already faltering and missing deadlines. The reason we've got to keep going is because they may not do it. It may not come to fruition. So we've got to keep going to keep services maintained. Thank you.
I completely agree. And that's exactly what we're doing. And look, they set themselves a very strict deadline on the devolution priority programme. We will decide by the end of January. Now, I know it was only a few days, but in terms of things like organising elections, that's quite a big undertaking. I mean, Damien's probably better placed than I to talk about this, but in terms of just simply like ordering the stuff, booking halls, a lot of village halls, these polling stations. Obviously, the orders couldn't be placed until we knew that the elections were going ahead, and the amount of hassle that's caused has been significant. And then you look in terms of services that you deliver. You talk about local plan, Mike, that you know better than anyone, really, and it does affect your thought process. The one thing we've got clarity on by not being in the devolution priority programme is that we won't be in that first wave, which means this is slightly further away for us. So I think that justifies the approach that we've taken to continue doing what we're doing, because we know that actually we've still got years left in us potentially if it happens at all. So we have to keep continuing to do our best for residents during that time.
Roger Railed.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a member of this committee, but sorry. You mentioned about the involvement of parish and town council. What happens if there isn't one like Tunbridge? There must be other areas in the county that don't have either. What happens about that?
Yeah, it's a good question actually, because in essence, the governments haven't required everywhere to have a parish or town council at the moment, and there are some districts. Sevenoaks is one which is entirely parished, and there are some districts like Tunbridge Wells where the majority of the area isn't in a parish council. So what would happen is, at the date in which one council ends and another council begins, all of the assets, whether that's sort of financial assets or property assets that are owned by the borough council in this case, for using the Tunbridge example, would just transfer over to the new authority. And in essence, the new unitary authority would continue to do everything that the Tunbridge and Morning Borough Council does in Tunbridge. I think it's really interesting that they haven't required borough council to go down that process, because, and I appreciate for us the majority of our area is parished, but this is a much bigger issue in some other districts too, particularly given that 500,000 size. And I think that's where there's a potential opportunity and a potential risk from a parish council perspective, because the white paper was so silent about parish councils.
Sure.
Do you think it would be more opportunity or opportunistic to get Tunbridge as a town council?
I think a case for a town council in Tunbridge becomes more obvious where you've got an authority that covers a larger geography, but that's just natural, really. I would say. I'd argue that I used to live in Tunbridge. I used to represent parts of Tunbridge. The Tunbridge and Morning Borough Council certainly is small enough to care about the town of Tunbridge, and we do. And you and I, Roger, have sat in enough meetings talking about Tunbridge issues and feeling like it's often all about Tunbridge, which of course we know it isn't. But the challenge for me actually kind of is a little bit of a step back from that. It's a case of, okay, what are the new unitary authorities going to do? We know they'll take on everything that we do. We know they'll take on everything that Kent County Council do, but we also know that the strategic authorities would cover those 7 service areas that they mainly refer to. So, for example, strategic planning. I mean, the local plan would sit with strategic or unitary. In that case, regardless of whether you have a town council in somewhere like Tunbridge, influence over the strategic plan is less likely. It's further away and covering a bigger area. So I think the whole question about creating parish and town council is one that we need to look at from a bit more of a distance. I don't think it's a Tunbridge and Morning problem. I think it's a problem that's going to affect anywhere that doesn't have one.
Kingseal.
Oh, sorry. Thank you again to Damien and Matt for an excellent presentation. If I may just switch roles slightly to Calc. Calc and NALC are obviously actively doing things for this, and Calc has already mapped throughout Kent the unparished areas. Going on from Mike's point about local plan, as a parish councillor, I've been asked numerous times about the local plan, and I'm just wondering if you can consider making the stages that are going to progress now very open onto your social media platforms in the stages that are coming up, especially when the 21st of March has been achieved and you've put everything in. So I would ask if the communication to parishes and residents is top of your list. Thank you.
So in terms of local plans specifically, and Michael, correct me if I get this wrong, so the Housing and Planning Scrutiny Committee of this council will consider a paper next Wednesday, and the paper's already in the public domain, that's got the new, it's called Local Development Scheme, but timetable is what you and I would call it, for the local plan on. So that sets out when we'd expect each different stage to happen. So that's obviously needs to be adopted and agreed by councillors first, and then once it is, that'll be available on the website for everyone to read. As I say, this is in terms of the 21st of March deadline and local government reorganisation proposals. This is very hot off the press. It wasn't even 24 hours ago that we got this, but nothing's on there yet. We also have to come together, and there is a requirement that you have to work with your neighbours. So, frankly, all of the councils across Kent and Medway are going to have to agree, sort of the how we do this. It's not going to be our decision alone, but we are plugged in, deliberately plugged in those conversations, but so is everyone. And we've got a meeting next week with all the Kent leaders to kind of go through the finer details of that.
Harry.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to answer or to respond to the point that Matt put forward in connection with KCC's indebtedness. KCC, these are in rough terms, but it has about £1 billion worth of debt, £1,000 million, and the interest on that annually is of the order of £100 million. So about the revenue turnover on the revenue budget is about 1.5 billion. So you can see that's 1,500 million, and of that, 100 goes on interest. You can do the calculations. I did a rough one on the back of the envelope that you've got 2 million people in Kent in round terms, and the share of the unitary councils will be in direct proportion to the headcount, splitting up around the 2 million mark. So that gives you a rough idea of the likely indebtedness. I noticed that Surrey County Council, however, have made application to the government for some of they have some district councils with some I would say pretty severe debt issues, and they've made application for about £1 billion to be written off. Now that's not to say the government are going to do that, but I just make that as an observation. Let me go on, if I might, Chairman, having responded to Matt, just to say that you know, I was as shocked as anybody by the outcome of the correspondence from the government yesterday, and really surprised, because one would have thought that from the beginning they would have known the difference in disparity between Medway and Kent County Council, and to leave it until the absolutely last knockings to realise that actually there was a big disparity rather belies the point of giving everybody the whip in order to get this stuff through between the 16th of December and the back end of January. So that being the case, I cannot actually believe it just it defies reason that they put this forward. One wondered if it was actually put forward as a bit of a joke. The point I would just go on to make as well is that I fail to see the incentive for the districts and boroughs to actually come up with the sort of plan, and particularly the sort of timetable. Why would you expect turkeys to vote for Christmas when the government can't even see its way clear to bringing forward the sort of mayoral combined authority that they had indicated was the preliminary to this? And on that basis, one would find, I would find it really surprising. In fact, I saw remarks in writing from at least one district/borough leader just in the last 24 hours, asking why the districts and boroughs would in fact go along with the Labour plans. Surely it would be better in the circumstances just to sit back and say, you know, you come and tell us what the situation is, and we'll give you an answer in due course. I'll leave the position there, Chairman, but it's a fair question to ask. Thank you.
I'll probably let Damien cover the finance points, given that Damien's predecessor authority was a Surrey District Council, but not one of those that was in the extraordinary levels of debt. But obviously, you know far more about it than me. But just on this, why Kent wasn't included. Look, I was making the assumption that I think everyone across Kent who'd followed this, that Kent would be in the devolution priority programme because we met all of the criteria that were put out. Our geography is established. And the thing that got me was the slide that we put up earlier. All of our neighbours are in the priority programme. So unless we're going to have a combined authority with the sea or France, there is actually nowhere else for us to go. So you may as well just put Kent in there. Now, I sat on behalf of all districts and boroughs in a couple of meetings with the ministers, with Roger Goff from Kent and Vince Maple, leader of Medway. And the phrase they used were, we are minded to include Kent and Medway in the priority programme. So Roger, Vince and I sat there, nodded our heads and were like, right, that kind of makes sense. That's what we work towards, and that's the expectation. It would probably be more helpful for them to turn around and explain this issue, which, as Harry said, is the population of Kent and Medway is known to anyone who Googles it, really, and say this is a potential barrier at the start, because then at least expectations could have been put in the right place and the work could have fitted around that. But it's frankly ludicrous, I think, and I think raises genuine concerns about the integrity of the process from the government side, and means that those who wish to be really, really hostile about it have actually got some evidence in order to do that. As I said earlier, I think we've got to recognise that the government will do this to us even if we don't like it or don't agree with their approach. Therefore, we should engage with the process. But I take the point that you, not made by you, Harry, but made by the person that you were speaking to. Madam, your name.
Thank you. Just on the issue of debt, it's definitely the case that while the county has significant debt, there are other places nearby, Surrey being one of them, where the debt held by the county, and disturbingly also the debt held by boroughs and districts, is significantly higher. And the thing about debt is that it only really hurts if you don't have assets held against that debt. If you have debt, but you have assets to generate income that more than covers the cost of servicing that debt and will pay that debt off over time, that's not a financial problem to be in. I think those councils across the country that are facing real hardship is where they have the debt and they don't have assets that either generate significant value or that they can sell if they had to repay that debt. And the good thing about the new unitaries is that they will inherit, it appears, based on what the government have only just told us, they will inherit the debt, but they will also inherit the assets. Hopefully, certainly over time, those assets should help contribute significantly to servicing that debt and ultimately repaying it. There's also an expectation that these new unitaries, because they will be bigger, and they won't have the tiers, great complexity, and sometimes tension between boroughs and counties. But actually, those new unitaries will operate more efficiently. Not from day one, but the expectation from government is over time, their economies of scale, their ability to leverage more weight in the market in terms of the contracts they hold, are going to be able to drive out efficiency. That will mean local government as a whole operates more efficiently. And that's the government's view, my view, certainly their expectation. When they ask us to produce financial information, they'll be looking for us to identify how some of those savings will be delivered. Thank you, Chair.
Leave it to any other business, Chairman.
Any other questions, Laura? Robin?
Thank you, Chair. Wasn't really a question, it was just a comment on this geography of our of Kent and the reasons why they haven't chosen us as a priority, because I think everyone was expecting that. And as Matt said, we're bordered by sea, so I don't quite know how they're going to reconfigure that geography to make it work. So in other words, don't really got much choice, unless of course they want to bust people in to change the numbers. I don't know. So my only thoughts about that is that because of the boundaries of the sea, you can't you can't change the geography. Is that whether it's a resource issue that might have been the problem, too much happening in too quick a time, or indeed they've got some other kind of political strategy up their sleeve. I don't know, but it was just a comment.
Say one thing. I think we are very, very fortunate to have Matt and Damien leading the fight for us, because when I looked around and saw some of the faces, they were so blank, lost. I thought, where are we going from? But we've got two guys that will do the best for us. Praising them.
I'm going to run over there.
Yes.
Item 8 is the update on climate change. Robin Betts.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll rattle through this, bearing in mind the time. We talked about Leybourne Lakes visit. That was before Christmas. Then Christmas happened. So we obviously have delayed that. So I'm thinking probably the best time to do a Leybourne Lakes visit is going to be spring. It's just around the corner, I hope. So if I get Kerry to give some ideas of dates, and then we can, whoever's interested to have a visit to Leybourne Lakes Eco Cafe, and we'll run through exactly what's been achieved there. We'll do that probably April time, I would expect, when the good weather's here. So that's that one. Just to update then what's been happening, I'll run through the list. Free carbon literacy training. So we've had 10 representatives from Parish Council that have completed that. And then the next tranche is going to be free carbon literacy training for schools in the borough. Again, funded by the same grant. I think that's going to be some point during this month. Target for tree planting, we've achieved that this year, 1,000 trees, I'm pleased to say. We try and do that every year, so that's good news that that's been accomplished. Now, the stuff that we've all been waiting for, and that's Larkfield Leisure Centre. So the first tranche of solar panels is going to start on Monday. We're literally allocated every bit of the roof of Larkfield Leisure Centre, and we're covering it in solar panels for obvious reasons, to obviously give the electricity to run the site. So yeah, that starts on Monday and it should be finished by the end of March, I believe. So we've got quite a large tranche of solar panels and plus roofing as well, reinstalating or upgrading the insulation and the roofing. And then the really big one is the air source heat pumps. Again, that starts on Monday as well. Not the actual air source heat pumps, but the cable. They're going to start with the trenching to upgrade the cabling to the site by Power Networks. So that starts on Monday as well. And then the whole project should hopefully be finished by around about November 2020. Sorry, November this year. And that will basically all the air source heat pumps replacing the gas boilers. So that's great news, because obviously then the air source heat pumps will be running on, or mostly running on, the extensive now installation of PV panels across the whole of the Larkfield Leisure Centre roofs. That's that. Just a quick one, Community Development Grant Scheme. It's open until the 2nd of March. I'm advertising this. It's not for parish councils, but it's for community local groups. So it's just a little plug for it for members of parish here tonight to really advertise that and to engage with any local groups and get them to apply before the 2nd of March. It's £2,500 worth of grant maximum, but it can be used for climate change and environmental actions. Anti-idling at schools, we continue with that. It's been an ongoing programme for us. And then just skipping through, yes, Gibson. So this building that we're in now, this is more of a property thing, but it does also support climate change, is the fact that this is Gibson West, a very inefficient listed building. And the idea is that we move all our services and staff out of this building into the more modern Gibson East. But what we're going to do first is refurbish Gibson East, upgrade it, better insulation, improve energy efficiency, and again air source heat pumps and PV. And then once that's done, then everybody gets moved over to the new side, and then we have some great ideas as to what we're going to do with the West. End of my report. Thank you.
Robin, can I ask a question? I did raise it regarding Labourne Lakes. Have we made provisions for car parking for our guests? Because we can't expect them to pay if we're trying to sell something.
As you know, Labourne Lakes is run by TM Active. So I'll have to have a quick chat with TM Active as to how we overcome that. But I'm sure it can be sorted. But I'll have a chat. It'll be Des I'll have a chat with about that one. Thank you.
Questions for Robin? Harry.
Yeah, just to ask the question, Chairman, whether any thought has been given to this sort of combination as to whether you could put flat top pontoons on Labourne Lakes and actually mount the solar panels on them as a really efficient way, not having to take up land, but actually look at. I've seen floating structures of this before, and I wondered whether any thought had been given to it from that perspective. Thank you.
Yes, yeah. Me personally, no, I've not given thought to that, but I have seen installations of pontoon floating PV panels. The only problem I would expect from that aspect at Labourne Lakes is the fact that it's being used for sailing, diving. So the thought of large scale PV panels covering that aspect of the lake probably wouldn't go down very well. So I think the priority is at the moment is to find every building that we actually own and cover that roof with PV panels. So once we've accomplished that, then we'll start looking at other alternatives, which can be car parking, shading that's then incorporates PV panels into that design. So there are other ideas that we can go forward with, but not the one with floating on Labourne Lakes. Thanks.
Robin, would it be possible this community grant for the details to be sent round to all the parish clerks? Because I think that will spread the word.
Yeah, Chair, I'll make sure that's organised and we'll get that out tomorrow. Oh, there's Jill. Yeah, she'll do that. Thank you, Jill.
They have been sent out. It's on the homepage of our website, but we can send them again. Just a reminder. Yeah.
Sorry. Item 9 is any other business, and invite Mike Taylor for detailed follow-up update is expected to be provided at the next meeting. Do you want to say anything at the moment, Mike?
Thank you very much. It's about consultation. There's two threads to this. There's an update on the local plan consultation, and I apologise to those who are at Count because they'll have heard all this before, and those that were at Borough Green Parish Council will have heard it as well. Yeah, you put me off now, Harry. I forgot my train of thought. Trouble about getting old. Right. Our officers for this run through the local plan have put together a very detailed and comprehensive set of meetings and seminars for borough councillors. The parish councils will be involved in consultation at the end of that process. But in the meantime, I think it's important that parishes keep in touch with their borough councillors and vice versa, because the borough councils will be able to update their parishes as they go along with the detail from these various seminars. And it is very detailed stuff and very important stuff. So that's the update on the local plan. The other aspect is consultation on planning applications. Now, the system we seem to have at the moment unless you get a good developer who does get in touch with parishes first, is the first you find out about a large and controversial application is when it's validated and comes out to you. By then, everybody involved, the developer, the planning officers, have put a huge amount of work and resources into arriving at what they think is the best plan. But they've forgotten about local people. And my suggestion is that as part of the actual planning process, when a larger application comes forward, I don't know how you decide what was a significant or a large application, but at that first moment, planning officers contact the developer and local members and arrange an informal first meeting. So the developer can come up with an illustrative plan, not a hard and fast plan, just an illustrative plan. It gives an idea what he wants to do. That gives local members a chance to influence that application right from the very start. The problem is with the system we have at the moment, by the time the developer has his application validated, it's too late for us to change it. And we've seen several applications recently where we've sat here till 11, 12 o'clock at night because the public can't understand why wildlife, traffic, conservation hasn't been taken into account. Well, it may have been taken into account, but it hasn't been taken into account from the perspective of local people and parishes. And I think early consultation is a way of short-circuiting that. And at the moment, the officers are looking at it, and I hope they're going to come back to me with a scheme that will work. Because some of the things we have to put up with, the 21-day limit on calling, the parishes don't always know even what the application is about before the deadlines run out. It's got to be wrong. We need to be involved, parishes need to be involved right at the very start. Thank you.
I comment on that, Mike, and I tend to agree with what you said, but you're the Cabinet Member for Planning. Please do it.
Thank you, Chair, again. Thank you, Mike, for raising that because it is something that has come up at the Calc Area Committee. And I will offline have further discussions with Mike to encourage him to take this forward.
Share with me, please, so we can pass it around the parish partnership. Thank you. Any other questions for Mike Taylor? Kings Hill? Sorry.
Westmoreland. Mike, one of the things that is an obstacle, I think, for the parish councils in getting their head around, especially some of the larger applications, is the website. So, for instance, Kilnbard Road, which had, I think it was 560 respondents, and it just says respondent. And you're going through and you're going, well, is this a neighbour respondent? Is this County Council Highways? Is this the Water Board? And trying to find what you're looking for, or even trying to find the responses from the other parish councils is, well, impossible is the word I can only use. It needs sorting out.
I have to agree with you. I have just as much trouble as you do trying to find out who said what. And it's partly the current system we are using, the Agile system. And without saying any more at this moment in time, there are moves underway to resolve that. I'd like to pass it over to Matt as well now, because I know he's...
Yeah, we've at various committees of the Borough Council, we've looked at the functionality of the Agile system, which is a system that the Borough Council moved over to a couple of years ago. It doesn't just cover planning, but it covers other service areas too, and there are other service areas that are looking at moving over. I think that this is one of the very obvious areas because, as you rightly say, we all have the same problem. In which we've been kind of working to get a solution as quickly as possible, but that solution hasn't materialised yet, which is why we all have the frustration, and it's a particular frustration on those larger applications. As Mike said, we've been up in the ante in recent weeks about getting this resolved as quickly as possible, because obviously we would like to be in a position where the remaining service areas outside of planning can move over as quickly as possible. But this is a very large and complex project. It goes beyond just the planning service and just planning applications, and there are issues. There are other functionality issues that affect members of the public, parish councils, borough councillors, borough council staff too. So as I say, we're trying to get this sorted in the next few weeks, and I hope that we'll sort of be able to provide a bit more detail about how and when it will be sorted in that time.
Thank you, Matt. Item 2, the work programme for 2025, which you'll find on page 17. At our pre-meet this afternoon, it's been suggested, because of the uncertainty about devolution, that we have on every parish partnership a window for an update as it becomes available, and so we're being kept informed all the time. So in addition to the agenda programme, we'd like to update on devolution. Local government reorganisation has been raised and added as a standing item on the agenda. Okay, happy with that? Thank you. Does anyone else have anything they wish to raise? You do.
It was just a quick plea to remind you that we extended the deadline for the review of parish partnership panel. And whilst I had some initial responses back, I haven't had very much else. So if there are any parishes out there that would like to make any comments about the way that parish partnership is undertaken, so far I've had lots of comments about whether it should be online, grid, or whatever. But if you have any thoughts, please do send them in to me. So you can email me directly or email committee services, and then it will go to overview and scrutiny.
Thanks, Jim. Right, as it stands at the moment, the next meeting of the Parish Partnership Panel will be held in person on the 29th of May 2025. Anyone wishing to submit items for a future meeting should do as soon as possible, and they will be considered at the next available meeting. So if you can put them into Democratic Services, and also copy myself and the 2 vice chairs, because sometimes we get an agenda that's got a horrendous amount of information to go through that we have to cut it down slightly, because, you know, we're near coming up to 2 hours. I think the last one was 2.5 hours, wasn't it? So it is a useful thing, but we do need to know that. So thank you all for attending, and I close the meeting at 9:25. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Goodbye.
Good night.